And welcome to episode 1 of AE Abroad. So just before we introduce our special guest, which I think you can see down there in the corner, AE Abroad is a new online produced by Athletics Exclusive, where we speak to Aussies who have opted to go and study abroad whilst living the life of a professional athlete. So as mentioned off the top, on today's show we speak to Auburn University student. Oh, and there goes my first error. I've got the background. So just before we introduce... Okay, I'll kill that. Sorry about that. So just before I introduce Reilly Shaw. So Reilly, thank you very much for joining us.
No worries, thanks for having me.
Okay, before we speak any further, just going to give some facts about Reilly. So hopefully these are all correct. So Reilly spent most of his life living in Canberra. In 2014, he moved to Melbourne to continue on his athletics. Whilst in Melbourne, he was coached by Craig Mottram. And in August this year, he moved to Alabama in the US. I knew I was going to get that wrong. To begin his 4 years of athletics, of an athletics scholarship at Auburn University. And Reilly's currently 20 years old. So are they all correct, Reilly?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, so, well, once again, thanks for joining us. It's been difficult trying to organise the time, but it's good that we finally got it. So this is going to be broadcast. It is being broadcast live now. Hopefully we get a few viewers, and then it will be turned into an episode or a series later on. So most people will watch it then. So can you, I guess before we go over to the college side of things, can you briefly explain, I guess, your history in athletics? So how you started in Canberra.
Yep.
Did you choose to move to Melbourne for a running purpose, or was it something different?
I mean, yeah, so long story short, my mum went to a few Olympics for the 10K and the marathon. So she sort of got me into the whole running scene. And the move to Melbourne was sort of pretty much based around Dad getting a job down there for being a school principal. And I was planning to move there anyway for university after my gap year. So that sort of just took me down there. And I was lucky enough to be able to do it with my family and be able to still live at home and keep that aspect of life a little simpler while I was able to sort of run throughout my gap year and work for Nike, driving around the running van, for those who may have seen that. But yeah, so the move actually was nothing to do with running, but it had some pretty good benefits in regards to running, being able to be coached by Craig. He has plenty of experience, as everyone knows, and plenty of wisdom. And that was certainly a big factor in just my decision coming over here as to whether I wanted to keep him as a coach or not. But yeah, that's a totally different story.
So we're going to fast forward a little bit. Are you still in contact with Craig at all? Or
yeah, so I mean, I'll generally talk to him on Skype, probably aim for every 2 weeks, and it's more so just to touch base. And obviously, he doesn't have any influence in my program anymore. But the coach here is actually very good mates with him, and they've known each other for a long time. So I'd just stay in touch and, just see how things are going back in Melbourne and how he's going and his family and the rest of the training group. And, he's sort of asking similar questions over here regarding school and what the races are like and how I'm going. And we just sort of stay in touch. So it's just good to sort of stay in touch on that level and keep what was the coaching athlete aspect out of it, because it's sort of no longer there.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned, so after you moved to Melbourne in April 2014, you had probably your first track and field season this year, or the major races were the track classics. So yeah. You did Briggs, Hunter and Adelaide, all of which you did different events and did quite strong. So you got your personal best in all of the events there. Can you run through them just after? So 5,000 meters at Briggs, which was the first one, January of this year. You ran 14:24:43. If I remember correctly, it was absolutely freezing down in Hobart that night. Can you talk us through that race?
Yeah, so that was only my second ever 5K on the track after doing the Vic Champs in November the year before. And it was sort of a last minute decision. I'd spent the first few weeks of January up at Falls Creek, and Craig and I decided that I was reasonably fit and it'd be worth just popping down there and having a shot at that and just seeing what I could produce. And I was sort of initially pretty disappointed with the race because I was running with a bunch of boys like Reilly Cox and Stuart McSwain who sort of ran low 14 teens, and I sort of dropped off them with a few laps to go and faded pretty badly. So I was initially pretty disappointed, but in hindsight, I think that sort of was pretty indicative of my fitness. And it was just good experience to get a race in, coming straight down off the mountain, and just more practice traveling to races and getting in those fields with the big boys and just sort of working out how to run a 5K as well. So there was plenty to be gained from it, aside from the time not being exactly what I had hoped for, but that's the sport. I mean, it's not always going to go to plan.
Yeah. Okay. And less than a week later, so 6 days later, you did the 1,500 meters at Hunter Track Classic there in Newcastle. 3:44.67. Once again, you got your PB. Quite a difference. The 1,500 to the 5,000.
Yeah.
How did you go about prepping for those two different races?
Yeah, so basically it was a pretty quick turnaround, and to get from Hobart back across to Melbourne and then up to Hunter via Canberra, because I was going to spend the week after Hunter in Canberra visiting family and friends and stuff. Basically what I did for training, my hip pulled up, my right hip got pretty tight after the 12 and a half laps in the 5K. So the next morning I basically hobbled through an hour, and it was pretty sore. So I went and had a few physio treatments that week and did a really cruisy tempo run and a bunch of gentle 200s on the Wednesday, and then just got myself up to Newcastle on the Friday night and raced the next day. So in terms of preparation, it was pretty low key and nothing speed orientated. It was just about getting my hip right, and I knew I was fit, and it was just a matter of hoping that the legs would sort of stay under me, not knowing how I was going to go in a much faster pace race compared to that 5K 6 days earlier. So it was all recovery based, really.
Yeah, so I mean, thinking of the 1,500, you've probably got your two different types of athletes there. You've got the faster ones that come up from maybe the 800, and then you've got the, don't want to say slower ones, but the ones with more of an endurance background. Do you consider yourself more of the endurance type, 1,500 meter?
Yeah, I'd sort of say I'm probably more your sort of 1,500 and upwards kind of runner, rather than sort of your maybe 8:15 touching on 3K kind of type runner. I haven't really run a serious 800 in a good 3 or 4 years, so I have no idea what I'd be able to produce there. So that sort of influences that whole thinking of 1,500 and up. But that's sort of where I want to race as well. I'd love to be that 1,500 5K kind of hybrid athlete, probably maybe even running some steeple in and around that. So sort of in that area is where I want to be racing anyway. So I don't have too much interest in the 800.
Yeah. And lastly, for the intro to 2015, you ran 3,000 metres at the Adelaide Track Classic on the 21st of Feb, 8:15.79. So another longer, I guess, distance, one that we don't really do here in Australia too much in the open age group. Is that why you chose to do it?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I was sort of running pretty well at that point, and I sort of thought at one point there was talk Brenton Rowe was going to pop over, potentially Jack Rayner. I knew Stuart McSwain was going. I was planning on going. Then Jack, thinking of going, and Reilly Cox, who was already in South Australia, and those other few South Australian boys. So it was talk that it was going to be a pretty good race, and I thought, while I'm fit, I might as well get over there and jump in on it. And at the last minute, Jack and Brenton pulled out. So the caliber wasn't quite there at the top end, sort of with Brenton bringing in that sort of international experience. But it was still a really good race. It was a super hot day. It was about 40 degrees all day beforehand, and I think it was about 30 degrees when we raced at 9 o'clock. And so it was pretty tough conditions. And Matt Clark from Melbourne was on the pacing duties, and he was 4:06 through halfway. And there was just a train of us, and it was just, it was a good little race between the bunch of us up the front. And luckily enough, I was able to get the win on the day, which was pretty cool, getting a track classic win, even if it wasn't the biggest race of the night. It was something that doesn't always happen all the time. So that was pretty cool. And that was sort of unfortunately sort of probably the end of my season, in a sense that everything sort of went downhill from there. I got a bit sick and just things started to fall apart a bit. I think fitness wise, I wasn't quite there to last a whole season yet. So it was good to sort of end on a positive note. Not that I finished racing there, but sort of that was my last good race.
Yeah. Oh, well, it was a strong season nonetheless. And we did interview you after that race. So you can see that for anyone interested by clicking on our YouTube channel as well. So 1500, 5K and 3K. What's your, I mean, you mentioned before that you're 15 and above. What's your main, or what event do you want to focus on?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I think I've shown a bit of potential in all three, but haven't really broken through big time in any of them yet. So it sort of could go anyway. I mean, I think being in America will help me choose that a bit. At the moment, the conference that my school, Auburn's in, is very, very heavy in the 1500. So to score, being a freshman against boys that are 3 or 4 years older than me, to score points at that is going to be tough. So I think I'm going to focus on more the 3 and potentially the 5 this year in the outdoor season, at least, just to sort of see how I fare. The steeple, I mean, similar to Australia, it's a little bit weaker just because it is a tough event and not as many people do it. So I might have a shot at being able to score points there and help the school out at overall there. So I think I'll focus on that. But really, I mean, I love each event just as equally. So I think I'll sort of fall into place probably where I end up performing the best. But I actually can't really give you a definitive answer as to which one I like the most, because I haven't really had anything to suggest it has to be one or the other yet. So for as long as I can do all three, I will do all three.
Yeah, well, you're performing quite strongly in all of those events, so I'm sure whatever you choose, you will find success. So we will move on a little bit now to, I guess, what we're about with AE abroad and the college system. How long have you known that you wanted to do what you're doing now?
So I mean, a quick sort of timeline of this whole decision. It ended up taking me about 2 years to get over here, in terms of in this time 2 years ago when I was just finishing up year 12, I got a message from a coach at Lamar, where Sean Guinea from Melbourne was currently just started. And at that point I was sort of pretty set against college because I mean, most Aussies know there's sort of this stigma that they burn you into the ground, and you know, you might run well for a couple of years, but that's about it. And so I was pretty against it, but I gave him the time of day to sort of talk to me about it. And a few months later, when I ran 3:47 at Briggs Track Classic, I got a few other schools coming after me. So I sort of heard them out again. And from there, I sort of realized that the system was probably a lot different to what I knew it was. And that was probably partly from what my mum had told me when she knew from, you know, kids going over to the system when she was competitive. And that was 20 years ago. So the system's totally different now. And I think a lot of the coaches here have realized they can't burn their athletes into the ground, and the school gets a lot of publicity if former athletes go on to world champs and Olympics and stuff. So that holds just as much importance as the point scoring in the 3 or 4 years they're there. But because I was moving to Melbourne, I wanted to just wait and see how that treated me, because the depth in Melbourne's 10 times better than it is in Canberra. And so I sort of wanted to just put everything back a year. So instead of starting a year ago, I thought if I'm going to go, it's going to be in August 2015. And in that time, I got onto Auburn and just sort of kept talking to the coach and realised it'd be a good fit, and popped over here for a 2-day visit just after track nationals in April. And that was a rough trip, but I basically decided then that I'd be mad to pass up the opportunity at least and just see what it was like. There was no obligation to stay. I mean, at any point, if I don't like it, I can go home, and, you know, I'm not obligated to stay. But so far I'm loving it. And yeah, it was sort of, in the end, I probably wouldn't be here. I sort of needed a new passport to be renewed, and that was probably part of my decision in not taking up the visit opportunity initially. And Craig told me to stop being an idiot and go and get the new passport and just go and see the school. I mean, the school paid for it. So, you know, for the sake of losing 5 or 6 days of a week to go and see the school at the least I could make an educated decision. And if he hadn't have forced me into doing that, I probably wouldn't have gone. I would have just played it safe and stayed in Melbourne. But I'm pretty grateful he made me do it, because I don't think I'd be sitting here right now doing this interview. So whether it was fate or not, I don't know, but I'm here. I'm loving it so far. So I guess that's all that really matters.
Yeah, is that something that normally happens? That's actually the first time I've heard of the universities or the colleges actually sending people over to have a look. Or...
So generally what will happen is, with the recruiting process, regardless of whether it's internationals or kids in America, and for most sports, sometimes a coach or a head coach will come and visit you. So for an international trip, it's more of a big deal, and they'll only do it if it's, you know, sort of like a hotshot athlete they're trying to get, or they'll fly you over there. And if it's an official visit, you can only be on campus for 48 hours. So if any kids are looking at doing a visit from Australia, I'd try and link up with a few other schools. You're allowed to have 5 official visits. So the schools will talk to each other and organise it. So I wouldn't suggest doing what I did and go over for 48 hours, because that's a trip that takes 30 hours door to door to get there, and you can only spend 48 there, and you spend another 30 coming back. It's a pretty rough trip, but for me, it was worth it. I didn't really have, by that point, I wasn't really talking to any other schools seriously. So it was a matter of me deciding whether I stayed or went to Auburn, and rather than picking schools. But yes, I mean, any kids that are looking at it, ask the school about it. If that's a deciding factor, they'll find the money to get you over there. They have a lot of schools have big pockets, so they can fly you over a lot of the time. And it is a good way to see the school. You actually get to experience it. You meet the team, you see the facilities, you meet the sort of medical staff, and maybe someone from the sort of school faculty you might be studying in. And it does open your eyes to way more than you can get from just looking up the school on Facebook and YouTube and their school pages and stuff. So it was worth doing it, as rough as it was. But yeah, I certainly didn't know about it until the coach said, "Yeah, we'll fly you over if you want." And it's a pretty done thing, I think, these days.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So now that I guess you're at the college, so, and this is probably just going to happen in the first episode, but can you explain the college system? So we're probably going to have a lot of people out there. Some would have really looked into it and know it back to front. Others, admit, like myself, don't really, or maybe not interested in it, or not, or just didn't do the research. Can you explain the college system in a nutshell? So you're a freshman.
Yes, basically, freshman is your first year. So basically, instead of doing 3 years like a general degree is, it's 4 years here. So freshman is first year, and then it goes sophomore, junior, senior, basically for your following years. Pretty much in every sport, you're allowed to have maximum 5 years of eligibility. Some sports only allow 4, but generally it's 5. For distance running, so track and field and cross, you have 5 years to do 4 seasons in each. So you do 4 of cross, 4 of indoor, 4 of outdoor. So you can get 5 years, more so to get around your degree length, or if there's any sort of preparation for a world champs team or something like that, you might redshirt a season where you don't have to compete for the school, and you just keep training with your team and you don't go and compete, and the school can't pay for you to go anywhere to race. But basically, other than that, you compete against everyone in cross country, indoors, outdoors, depending on what school you go to. The schools are all broken up into conferences, which is sort of just like your school carnivals have their zones. It's kind of on that basis. There's a bunch of different schools you compete against. And then generally each sport will have a regional system, which will be different for every sport. It's different for cross track and for cross indoors and outdoors. So for other sports as well, it's done differently. And then you have some sort of championship title, whether it's, football playing off, in early January, or you've got your cross indoor, outdoor separate titles. Softball have knockout series. Every sport's different, but generally you'll do conference stuff, regional stuff, and then nationals.
Okay. So is it similar to, so in terms of classes and obviously the college system, sporting side of things is quite, is more advanced than that in Australia. Classes, how does that all, so is it similar to what you know of Australian universities? People come, are there more boarders or people that are staying at the colleges, universities in America than Australia, or is it pretty similar to what we've got set up here? Yeah,
so generally, first of all, your general degree, like basic degree, undergrad, will take 4 years instead of 3, but you sort of spend 1 year to 2 years doing basic subjects. So this semester I'm doing basic pre-calculus math, which is pretty much like the stuff you do in year 11 and 12. I'm doing geology, I'm doing an introduction to business course, and I'm doing English. So it's almost like being back in high school. You do get to pick a schedule like you do at university rather than school getting it given to you, but the way the work's done is very similar to school. You go to class more than you do at university, and you have more work, but the work's probably not quite as hard. So when you balance that out with not going to classes often necessarily in Australia, and you have a couple of big assignments, you probably do the same amount of work. It's just broken up differently. And it ends up being like I do 50-minute classes to an hour 15 kind of classes. So they're not long. They're not big 3-hour lectures you sit in. And then generally every school is going to be different with how many people live on campus. But there is a lot of people that live on campus because, lots of people do move into state or within the state, but they're a couple of hours from home for university. So pretty much I think Auburn's about 50,000 people in population. And there's 25,000 students on campus. So I'm not sure if that includes the 25,000, but if not, it basically doubles or half again in size when school's in, with everyone coming in from campus. So it's very much a college town. So a lot of people do live on campus or they live off campus very close by. So it's quite different to Australia, but at the same time, there's aspects that aren't that different.
Yeah. Okay. And so moving on, so day one, so getting off the plane, I presume you went straight there. Can you take us through that whole day? So from the moment you stepped foot off the plane to that night, what happened? Did you have team meetings? Introduce to know any of your team prior to that day? What was it like? What was the experience?
So pretty much I'd met a bunch of the boys on my visit. So I and I'd been staying in touch with them. So I that aspect was fine. I had a few visa issues, so I actually got over there quite late. So I got there on a Saturday night at about 10 p.m. and basically I couldn't even get into my room on the first night because our RA didn't have access to get me the key yet. So I slept on the couch because my personal room was locked. And my roommate had already moved in. And the next morning I got up and did a long run and probably ran a bit too long off the plane, which sort of cooked me for a few days. But then pretty much finished my long run, had to go straight to a physical, which every incoming athlete has to do. Went from that straight to get books for classes the next day because this was a Sunday. I had a compliance meeting that night, and the compliance officers at every school basically make sure that all the athletes follow the NCAA rules and you don't break rules. And there's so many rules and so many of them are very dumb, but you've got to follow them and get sanctioned. And so compliance meeting was pretty important. And then the next morning I was straight into classes. So it was pretty quick turnaround, and it was pretty rough being jet lagged. So I took it easy the next few days running. But by the end of the first week, you start to get your head around what has to happen, and you sort of get past the whole, like you feel foreign, but you sort of start to know where things are and what to do and where your classes were. So you didn't feel like a complete outsider. You sort of felt a little more ingrained in the college. So that was pretty good that didn't take too long. But yeah, it was pretty hectic from the start, and there was just all week there was meetings to go to, paperwork to sign, to be cleared to practice, all these different things. But by the end of the first week, that had all settled, and I was able to sort of just try and get some sort of normalization going and get into the swing of things and knuckle down for training because our races were coming up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So you went straight into cross country season over there in the US. Can you take us through your training? So how it works? So you're obviously on an athletics team. How does it all? How do you fit that in? Is it after classes? Is it in between? Is it in the mornings? Yeah. Can you just run us through that?
So the biggest thing is, every sport and every team's different, and where you go geographically will affect when you train. So for me, because I'm down south, the first probably 2 months, it was very hot and humid. So it's 8 miles here, but your hour jog or something you might do was all done very early in the morning. So lots of sort of 5:15, 5:30 a.m. get out of bed to be running at 6 or 6:15 to beat the heat. But basically, main runs are in the morning, and then you sort of done through the training room with your rehab and recovery and stuff, off to have breakfast and off to class by 9 o'clock. And generally most people will do classes from 9 till 12 or 1. And that depends on when you choose to pick your classes and what days you put them on. And then you might have a couple of hours off, and we'll meet for our second runs or for some gym work or something like that if we're doubling about 3:30 or 4. When it's quite hot, we'll put it off a little bit further. And then again, you go through the training room if you've got more rehab, and then off to dinner, and then you go and do some work overnight. So it depends on when your training sits. So I know for us going into indoors, it'll be winter. Our main runs will switch to the afternoon. So I tried to get most of my classes for second semester in the morning because we'll only have a couple of small jogs at the worst, and keeping the afternoon pretty free for workouts and stuff, and fit a bit of schoolwork in and around there. So it does change a bit based on sport. Different sports will have different times to practice and train, and so they'll have different class schedules and stuff. But generally 9 till 12 is when you try and get most of your classes done, maybe into mid-afternoon.
Yeah, so it's up to you to work out or know when you're...
So we get told when we're basically going to be training, and we basically then can fit our classes around that as we wish. And that's just, everyone on the team has a totally different schedule, but it roughly follows that sort of 9 till 1, 9 till 12 sort of format.
Yeah, so in terms of your team, how many people are on it?
So for cross country, men and women have different rules based on the US having a law of Title IX, which basically says that men and women have to have equal number of athletes. So men's football has 120 guys on the team. So that means that pretty much every other men's sport has to have less. And sports like equestrian and soccer are female only, and softball and stuff. So we can only have 12 guys on our roster, and we've got 11. The women are allowed 18, I think. Then for track, it's totally different. You're allowed to have as many on your team, but you're only allowed to have 34 people compete each weekend. So that's a little different, but we've got 11 boys on the team. At the moment, one has a stress fracture, which was sort of, he brought in coming in, and he's sort of a bit more fragile. So that was unlucky for him. And that was in his femur. So he's out for a while. And another guy had Achilles issues, my roommate, Eric. And so he got redshirted. And then other than that, so we've had 9 healthy guys, and basically, you generally have your main 6 or 7, and then the other guys are sort of on the fringe. So there's not heaps on the team in comparison to others, but it's probably not really any different to what most training squads are like back home, where you've sort of got a core group of 10 to 15 maybe. It's that aspect's not that different.
And do you all compete in a cross-country race? Or is it...
Yeah, so pretty much every race, so everyone's competed this season. A couple of meets you go to if they're a bit bigger, depending on who wants to, how they're organised, they might cap numbers. For SEC Champs, which is our conference, which is this Friday for me, which I travel to tomorrow, you're only allowed to race 8, I think. And then for your regionals and your nationals, you have to nominate 15 guys, a team of 15 that you will select basically. And from that 15, you can race whoever you want, whenever you want on the weekend of regionals and then nationals. So some teams that are quite strong can race a totally different team at regionals to that of nationals. So there is all these little rules that I'm slowly learning, but basically everyone's had at least a couple of races. So the guys that are sort of the back end have had at least 3 races this season, and if they were sort of able to scrape into the travel squad, they had a couple more. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And so last thing on sort of, I guess, the team. What's the team dynamic like? You obviously room with people. Are the people you, I guess, hang out with more the ones on your team? So ones on the athletics, the cross-country scholarship, or do you hang out with the people you study with? In the same sport?
So for me, part of the reason I came here was because on my visit, I just bonded with the boys on the team straight away, and we hang out quite a lot on the weekend when there's football games on and the team's not playing at home. We'll all go to one of the boys that live off campus and watch it on their TV, and we do things together as a group, which is quite different to what our female team dynamic is. I mean, with having more people on their team, there's always going to be the little separation to little groups, but whatever the reason is, I'm not sure because I'm new, but the dynamic isn't quite the same with the girls. So they don't all get along as well as we do as a core group of boys, but that's bound to happen. And then in terms of who I hang out with, a lot of the guys, on the team, but then and one from Florida and a decathlete from here, and those 3 plus me and my roommate, we sort of hang out a fair bit, and we'll probably try and get a house next year. And we sort of, from day one, we all got along really well, very similar personalities, and we love stirring each other up, but at the same time, we'll all just get along. We're all in similar classes, so we can study together. So they're probably my best mates aside from the guys on the team. But the vibe here is pretty good. Every student athlete generally has a good idea of who everyone is, and everyone's pretty friendly for a chat. And we have a study centre just for athletes, so you see them all the time. And where we eat, there's an eating centre, like an eating dining hall, which is generally for athletes. So you're always seeing other athletes from sport, and from the massive footballers through to like the little gymnasts. It's a pretty cool dynamic to have, and it's something that's pretty different to what you experience at back home in Australia, because it's very individualized back home, but here it's almost the opposite. They make an individual sport a team sport.
Yeah. So no, it sounds really sounds like you're not even just bonding with just the track and the similar guys doing the same sports, but everyone. So that seems like a really cool. And anyone that's thinking, any younger athletes that are thinking of doing it, definitely, I'm sure that would appeal to a lot of people. So looking at so far you've done 2 races. So you've only been there since August, but so you've done 2 races, or the bigger races.
Yeah, so 2 bigger ones.
Now I'm going to not say this right. Panorama.
Panorama Farms. Yeah.
And Crimson Classic. So I know we've already been going on a fair while, but so can you go over these 2 events? So you came. I'll just go over them quickly. Panorama, it was September 26th. You came 48th, third in and out of your school college. Both of the distances were 8K. In Panorama, you ran 25:08. And in the Crimson Classic, on October 16th, you came 24th overall, second in your team, 8K and 25:18. Can you set the scene for us for the cross-country races? I mean, here in Australia, basically it's just wet and muddy. Is it any different to what you experienced over there?
Yeah, it is totally different. I thought I'd come in and be able to be all right, because the general consensus is most courses are sort of flat golf courses, and that is the case for a lot. But so Panorama Farms was hosted by the University of Virginia. That course was a purpose-built cross-country course, but in terms of how hard it was to run, it was probably similar to that of Bandura. There was a couple of big hills, and you just couldn't get any rhythm for any part of the course. And I was sort of disappointed with that race, because I'd worked my way through the field by 5K and then sort of blew up a bit on the back half. So when I came to Crimson Classic, which was hosted by the University of Alabama, which was just down the road, and they're a big rival of ours, I was pretty determined to run faster. And the race at the Crimson race didn't quite have the same depth at Virginia, so that was partly why I finished a little higher. Time-wise as well, the course was apparently a little long, so I've pretty much been running 25:07, 25:08, 25:10 for my 8K crosses all year, regardless of the course. And so that aspect has been good. That's been consistent. But Crimson basically was an afternoon race. It was hot. The course was dry and dusty. And I'd worked my way through the field to about 10th and was running well and was planning to run on. And sort of the last mile, the wheels fell off pretty badly, and I faded back to sort of mid-20s. So I was pretty disappointed in that. But every race as well has been just getting better and better at just stringing together a complete 8K. So hopefully down at SECs in a few days, I can string that together, because that's the race I need to string it together in. And but yeah, distance-wise, it's the same as back home. But if you shut down a race in the last K back home in Melbourne, you might lose a couple of places. And if you do that here, you could lose 40 places. And those 40 places, those 40 places could come in the space of 30 seconds maybe. So just the depth here is something that I still haven't really got my head around when it comes to cross-country running. A couple of big meets that happened a few weeks ago, the pre-nationals race, which is always the viewing race for the nationals course. They had 110 guys or something finish under 25 minutes, and 25 minutes is sort of a ballpark time for your cross country for 8K. So one race had, just a crazy amount of people, and I think 70 of those guys finished under 24:30. So you can just sort of see where the depth comes in, and basically you've got 5 guys finishing every second. So it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And so the 2 competitions, so how do they determine what schools compete? Is it all just based on the conferences? So you verse the same schools every time, or?
No, so generally it's a matter of cross country. Like University of Wisconsin has a massive race. The pre-nationals is always a big one. Notre Dame have a massive race. So some schools are just known for having big famous races that are generally pretty competitive. For us, we keep it a little more local. So Virginia and Crimson are generally our big races of the year. Nothing's conference based until you get to your conference. So you can go and race wherever you want, whenever you want. But basically, we sort of keep it a little more centralized to where we're located, and use the track season for indoor and outdoor to go and chase the big races where the times do matter. For cross, it's just about getting a good race in. And that's one thing that's pretty different here. The Americans are pretty obsessed with what their cross-country PB is, whereas back home that's non-existent, because everyone sort of knows that you can't compare times on courses because they're all different. But here people are sort of caught up with that. So while I talk about the times I've been running at the same time, it's only because that's what everyone does here. I don't really care what my cross-country time is. I just, enter every race with trying to win, knowing that probably most races at the moment I'm not going to, but you try and finish as high as you can, and eventually one day it'll click and it'll pay off.
And the races, are they organised by schools, or is there a body?
Yeah, generally they are.
Yeah.
So a school will host it. So we don't host a cross-country meet, which is kind of lame, but it would be cool just because you might be able to get a few of your friends and stuff to come out and watch. But we don't host one. There's been a couple of local ones. It really just depends. Some schools will put the money into building a purpose-built cross-country course. So if they're going to do that, they're going to host meets. For us, we don't. And the golf course, our golf team trains on pretty hilly. So for an early season meet, which is all we'd host, it's not ideal. So we sort of travel for those. But yeah, generally a school will just host one and then your conferences is shared between schools each year. So I think we have conference here in a few years' time, so we'll have to go and rent a golf course out. But yeah, it's all based on just schools hosting meets, and you just shop around to where you want to run.
Okay, yeah. So it's basically up to the schools to decide what they want to run at.
Yeah, generally the coach will just pick where he wants to run, and we go there.
Okay, and one last question I had, but I forgot. Oh, so just 2 races? Is it just a male and female, or is there?
Yeah, so generally, depending on where it is as well, because obviously all the high schoolers are in their cross-country season. Some meets we've gone to, so Crimson Classic, we raced at 5:30, and the girls raced just before us, and all day basically there was high school races, and all the high schools are split up into different divisions. And then some schools will even host Div 2 and Div 3 university races, but generally there'll be one Div 1 race for men and women, and then there might be some Div 2 and 3 races, or some high school races incorporated, or sometimes it's just a D1 men and women's race, and that's it, depending on how big the meets are.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got on your schedule that I was looking at, you've got 3 races to go. SEC champs, so SEC for anyone that doesn't, Southeastern Conference, so the section that you're in, championships, and then you've got the NCAA, so National Collegiate Athletic Association South Regionals, and then the championships. So I'm more, I guess, focused a little bit on those, on the NCAA races. How do you, so I presume you compete at regionals, and then is there a selection criteria for the championships, or does everyone run?
So basically, this weekend is everyone's conference champ for cross country. So everyone will have it, no matter what school or what conference you're in, at some point this weekend. So basically, then 2 weeks later is the regionals, and everyone goes to regionals. You don't have to qualify like you do in outdoor track. So everyone runs at their regions. There's 9 regions in America. And basically, your first 2 teams across the line at each region get a spot to nationals. And then there's a kind of complex system where they basically pick another 13 or 14 teams, I think, based on a point system of who beat who throughout the year at these races that we go at. So to keep it simple, if we beat a school throughout the year that then beats us at regionals and gets an automatic place, basically we score points, and the schools that score the most points by doing that get to go. So you'll have some regions that'll have, so we're in a weak region, so generally we'll only have 2 teams, the first 2 teams come out, and some schools will have 6, just based on where the good schools are located for cross country. And then they give out a bunch of individual spots. So your top 4 at regionals that aren't part of a successful team get to go. So it is kind of complex. But basically, our team where it's at, we would have to have a blinding run at regionals to make nationals, which is the week after regionals, or one of us on the team would have to have a a blinding run as an individual to make it. So we're sort of thinking more a few years down the track. We've got a pretty young team, but we definitely have 2 more races. And if we were very lucky and the running gods were in our favour, we might have a third, being the NCAA champs, sort of around Thanksgiving in the end of November. But we'll cross that barrier if it ever happens. Yeah.
Okay. So, and the NCAA, I think you said before we went live, is 10K rather than that.
So regionals and NCAAs is 10K, which is a pretty tough turnaround for the guys that do both, because there's only 8 days between the races. And then your conference champs is 8K, and generally most of the other races before those are 8K, just to get you ready for that.
Okay, and well, thanks for that. So I guess now looking ahead, what's next for you? So you obviously, when does track and field season start?
So pretty much the sort of official but unofficial start of the indoor season is the 1st of January. Most schools, some schools are back by then, some schools aren't. My first race will be the 15th, 16th that weekend. And then we host a meet, of January, and then we host a meet the week later. We don't have an indoor track at the school, but we have one 2 hours down the road, so we host it there. And then really there'll probably be one more race I'll get in before our conference champ. So indoors is pretty condensed. I might get to travel to either the Husky Classic up in Washington, which if anyone that watches Flow Track will know that's a pretty good meet, or the meet that happens at Boston, which is where people like Galen Rupp and stuff have run crazy fast times and done crazy mile repeat workouts afterwards. So to be able to go to some of those tracks would be pretty cool. But indoors is condensed into about 2 months, and then you sort of have a couple of weeks cruisy, and then you're into outdoors, and outdoors runs until early June. So they sort of split the track season into indoors and outdoors based on the weather. So there is 3 seasons, but it's basically track and cross.
Yeah, and so you cross-country team members, are you all automatically in the track team?
Yeah, so based on how Auburn runs their program, all the distance guys run cross, and they're the only distance guys that will run track. Some schools won't have guys on their cross-country roster, but then we'll have them just on the track roster. They can do that. They have more depth. We sort of don't have the depth to warrant that. So all the boys will be running. I mean, they'll split up into varying distances. We've got a bunch of 800 runners through to probably a guy that'll do a 10K maybe, but there's a pretty even spread across the 8, the 15, a couple of steeplers, and then a 5K, 10K kind of group. So there'll be plenty of boys to still train with, even when we split up into our own groups. But yeah, it's totally different to cross, where everyone does the same workouts and all racing the same distance. Track will be a little more individualized. Yeah.
And so how long is, I don't know if you said, I know you said you can come and go as you please, but how long is your course? Yeah.
So pretty much
be there.
Yeah. So, I mean, provided nothing goes wrong, which I hope it doesn't, I'll be here for, I think I'll only do 4 years, because I was a little older starting. So if I did 5 years, I'd be 25 when I'm graduating. And by that point, you know, the dream is hopefully to be able to be running fast enough where I can have a contract with whatever brand it is. And, you know, if I can make a living off it, that's a bonus. But basically pursue that professional lifestyle. So I reckon I'll just do the 4 years. And so that will basically take me through to the middle of 2019, which is the end of an academic year, but that's the middle for everyone down in the Southern Hemisphere. So it'll be 4 years, 4 seasons of each. And we'll see where it goes. I mean, at the moment, I have a plan because I need a university degree to see it out. But yeah, who knows what'll happen if I run fast, or if I don't run fast and I don't like it, I might get injured. You can never tell that stuff, but the plan will be 4 years and coming home a couple of times a year just to see family and our holidays.
Yeah, and I guess it leads me into my last question. Is it?
Yep.
I know you've only just got there. Is it a lifestyle? And you probably answered just before, but a lifestyle that you can see yourself wanting to continue on? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, basically, what's really good about this system is that, and my coach explained it to me when he was recruiting me, but you basically get to train like a professional. Like, you're given gear, which is your school gear. So that's like being sponsored. It's pretty much like having your own physio, your own massage therapist. Basically, you know, you've got, you know, a nutritionist, you've got your food covered, you've got your room covered, you get paid for all your travel to races and so on. So it's like pretty much living the professional lifestyle. You get to go to some crazy races with insane depth. So you never have an easy race. I mean, no races are ever easy, but you never get a soft field really. And all you have to do is really go to like 3 or 4 hours of class a day. And to be honest, the classes aren't that hard. It's pretty similar to what people do in year 11 and 12. So as much as I shouldn't say this, I don't have to do heaps and heaps of study to get work done, which isn't obviously the best, but I can make it work. And so you really, and they fit they fit the schoolwork around the training, because sports is just so big here. So, you know, you basically get to be a professional, and you get shown how to be a professional, and at the same time you get a degree, and you get it for free, and you come home without any debts, and you know, you've got this life experience. You've trained like a professional, so if you ever get there, you know what to expect to an extent, and you've got a free education. So there isn't too much to be lost. I haven't really got homesick, which I guess is a good thing. Obviously, I miss home and miss family and so on, but I'm just always on FaceTime to mum and dad and my brother, and a few of my mates and whatnot, and just making sure I'm talking to people on Facebook. And I've got a Facebook page that I try and keep updated just for people to follow what I'm doing. Nothing to do with being a professional or blowing my own trumpet. It's just for people to follow, because I know when I was looking at this, all I wanted to be able to do was just experience what it was like, and you can't do that. Some schools will put up YouTube videos of their facilities, but that's about it. So, I mean, if this conversation, what we've had today, helps anyone wanting to go, if anyone wants to talk to me on Facebook, they can message me. You can pass on details and whatnot, because I know for me, being able to talk to people was so valuable, and being able to know what the system is like, because it's so different, is so hard to come across. So yeah, for anyone watching, if they want to talk to me, they can. If they want to just follow the Facebook page, if that helps, that I try and keep that updated with photos and results. I do forget a bit, but yeah, anything I can do to help anyone, I'm happy, because I know I appreciate it so much when I was looking to get the odd Skype chat with someone that was in the system, who was in a similar situation to me. So that was pretty valuable. And I think what you're doing with this, talking to the bunch of Aussies in America, will, one, it's a cool idea, but two, it'll allow those kids that are wanting to look at college get a better insight. And obviously you'll be talking to people from different schools, so they'll get a good range of idea of what it's like to be there, and then they've got someone to go and talk to.
Yeah, and so I mean, you mentioned off the top there your page and Twitter account, so we will have them posted with the video. Yep. So, but you can follow Reilly by basically just searching for his name in either Facebook or Twitter. But yeah, we will have the links, so if you do want to speak to Reilly about it, I'm sure he's more than happy to help you out in that case. And yeah,
anytime.
Sorry.
Anytime, seriously. I mean, like, anyone can just message me on Facebook, and you know, I won't respond straight away, and I'm sorry if a response comes through in the middle of the night, because I sort of messed up the time zones. But yeah, I'm more than happy to talk to anyone, even if they want to Skype or FaceTime, because there is a lot to be gained from the system. I mean, every school is different, and it is a matter of finding the right place. And obviously, it's not going to be for everyone, but more and more people are making it successful, like your Geordie Williamses and your Sam McEntees and your Kev Batts. And I know Lyndon Hall's just come back from the female side. Everyone knows about Jen LeKays and stuff. So there's plenty of people that are making it work, and there's plenty of people in the system that are doing pretty well at the moment. So I think it's changed, and it's something that Aussies should be looking at a little bit more, especially just the way AA is set up. They can't help everyone, and this is a good way to get the help when you need it. And if I can help anyone, then I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, what we hope to achieve with AE Abroad. So launching very soon in the next few weeks. I mean, this video will be there, and there'll be a few other live chats coming soon. But we do hope to, I guess, broaden the awareness of what you are doing, studying not only in America, but in the other countries as well. So we do hope it helps people. Reilly's a great example, and a few of the other people he's mentioned who it's succeeding for. And if we can give a little bit more of an information and an insight into what you guys are doing, then we've achieved our goal. So I guess I'll finish up there. It was only meant to go to half an hour, on about 50 minutes. So thank you very much, Reilly, for joining us. So this interview will stay live for those guys watching and wanting to watch in Australia once school finishes and things like that. We'll stay live for the next couple of days. and then it will be taken down and edited and chucked into a TV show. But thank you very much, Reilly, for joining us.
No worries. Thank you.
To everyone watching, thanks for watching AE Abroad. We will be live in the next few days with a few other Aussies studying overseas. So be sure to keep an eye on the Facebook chat, Facebook page, and all our other social networks for all that. Thank you very much. Until next time.
Thank you. See you, everyone.
Bye.